Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So,
Yep. Hello.
how did you get into comedy?
Well, I'd always wanted to do it, and I think it was about 10 years ago. I used to go to the Edinburgh Festival a lot,
Okay.
and I noticed that there was a comedy course that people were doing. It was the the Amuse Moose comedy course. So I went down to London to do that, and I haven't really looked back since then. It's a fantastic course run by someone called Logan Murray. It's a great course. If anybody wants to do it, it's a great way to get into comedy.
Did you meet any interesting people on that course? Like people you're still friends with today?
Yeah, I still run into people on the circuit and that have done it. Some people, I think there's about 20 people per course usually, and they run quite regularly. And obviously, I think inevitably 10 out of 20 people just sort of drop out by the wayside after they've done the first gig. But then after that, you still find a lot of people dwindle on. There's still certainly people off my course that were doing it. People like Rod Gilbert, he did the course. So there's people that have done that and gone quite a long way from it. So it's a great way to start.
Oh, that's cool. Which comics have personally inspired you?
I don't know. I mean, I quite like a lot of the older ones. People like Peter Cook and Tony Hancock. I don't know if you're aware of them at all.
Heard of them?
Yeah, from the olden days. But yeah, they have great stuff. I mean, there's a lot of great comedians out there, but I think a lot of the ones when you're a kid, when you see people, that's quite often what influences you.
What was your dream job as a child? Did you always want to go into comedy, or were you aiming for something a little different?
Comedy's always been one of the things there. I think I've liked the idea of doing stand-up for quite some time. When I was about 8, I went to see Ken Dodd with my parents, and I thought it was absolutely hysterical. I was in stitches the whole time, and he's still going. I've seen him recently. He's still on the ball with it. He's still got his comedy chops. But so since then, I think really that was one of the times when I thought, yeah, I'd love to do this. It's fantastic. But apart from that, I wanted to be an artist and all sorts of things like that, really. So it's not been single-minded, and it took me till I was 32 to get started. So it's it's not like I rushed into it when I was 18 or anything. But no, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So when would you say you were finally like, no, this is what I want to do? This, like, aside from anything else, I want to be a comedian.
I don't know. I think it was probably built up over I used to go to the Edinburgh Festival every year to watch the acts, and there's some fantastic acts there, and you see people at all the different stages. You see people that have been going for years and are really professional, and people that have just been, that's their first festival and it's the first time they've performed, and it's just great to see people doing stuff. And I think I went 5 or 6 years running, and then thought, you know what, I've got to give this a go. I've got to find a way into it, and that's when I went for the course.
Well, you're mentioning fresh-faced comedians there. So for any budding comedians, do you have any piece of critical advice that you feel you'd like to pass on to them?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think courses is a good way of doing it. I know a lot of people, moan about courses and say you can't teach comedy, but if you go to a good course, the gist of it is that they don't teach you how to be funny, but they give you a chance to practice in a sort of in an environment that's a bit friendlier than the typical pub gig or anything. So you get to hang around with a few people that are trying out material. Nobody will tell you what to write. Nobody can tell you how to be funny. But you get an environment there where you can test out material. And I think really it takes away the terror of that first gig where you turn up somewhere and you have to get up on stage for the first time in front of an audience. It eases you in. So I think that's a great way of doing it. Other than that, there's a lot of gong shows, which is the brutal way into the comedy course, into the comedy world, where people turn up and you get between 1 and 5 minutes and people vote you off and gong you off if you do badly. So that's the brutal way if you're brave, get into comedy like that. But apart from that, the best bit of advice I think is just keep doing it, do as many gigs as you can. Let's say you don't know who you are on stage until you've done 100 gigs at least. So that's a bit of advice, is just go out there and keep doing as many gigs as you can. That's the best way of learning.
Did you find yourself like going around a lot to like local bars, doing small acts?
Yeah, oh God, yeah. I've done some bizarre. Over the years, you turn up at places that want comedians. Al Grant, who you interviewed earlier, was Cocaine the Clown. I've been to some strange ones. We started out around the same time, and I remember we ended up in Weston-super-Mare doing a pole dancing club one time. We turned up there. I think they didn't realise quite what our acts were like. I was dressed as a rabbit. I don't know if they got the wrong idea about it or something like that. But we were standing there on stage. We were going in there between dancers. It was a very strange experience. And there's been plenty like that, really.
Who would you love to go on tour with?
I don't know. That's tricky, isn't it? I don't know. There's so many great comedians out there, but I suppose, really, I mean, if you could go out with anybody, there's a lot of the classic old acts. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's too hard to say. I don't want to say anything. You never know. You might get the chance, and I'd like to be able to tell whoever it is that I get a chance to go with that they were my first choice. So I better keep it quiet, I think.
Good plan there. What's your thought process for coming up with jokes, and like, do you incorporate any of your own life situations into your comedy?
It's varied. It's varied. I did do a show a couple of years ago, which was generally about lots of things that had gone wrong with my body over the years. It was about talking, getting people used to the idea of ageing, and it was talking about the way comedy builds up over, it breaks taboos and things like that. So I was talking a lot about things like the time my genitals got ripped, or terrible times I've been to the toilet and stuff like that. So that was about my real life. I actually did get my genitals ripped, but we won't talk about that now.
That's another story.
Yeah. You particularly won't want to hear that. It just tends to make the men in the audience very tense. So yeah, I've done that. But also, I think a lot of the stuff, you just come up with an absurd pun in your head or something like that. Sometimes you think that's a strange little idea. I'll play around with that a little bit, and next thing you know, I've got my jokes. I think are overly laboured, and there really is nothing to do with my real life in those. Generally, it'll be absurd, I would say. So yeah, just those crazy little ideas you get in the middle of the night and then sit up and jot them down. Yeah.
I think that's everything from me.
I think I'll finish up with a silly question, if you're fine with that. Okay, so a mediocre genie comes out of a mediocre lamp and offers you a mediocre wish. What mediocrity do you wish for?
Right, okay. I don't know. I mean, if I was after mediocrity, then I suppose my career so far would be a dream come true. So I don't really know what else I can ask for after that. I think that would do it.
You've already had your wish granted then.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry it was a bit rushed, but
It's all right.
cool.